Okay, first presenter up, Morgan Washington. You're on the clock, Morgan.
Okay, hey everyone. So I'll be presenting over sustainable cities today and how we can implement characteristics of sustainable cities in the Fort Worth environment. So I'm going to start with the definition of what sustainable cities are, and these are cities with urban planning that address anthropological impacts of the economy, our society in general, and especially our environment for the purposes of this presentation. And I'm also going to be going over different characteristics, or I guess the most common characteristics of sustainable cities, such as sustainable buildings, public transportation systems, green technology, water conservation, urban farming, things like that. So I'm going to start off with sustainable buildings. So sustainable buildings on the whole improve quality of life, conserve energy, and reduce pollution. And the most common method of naming LEED certified or naming sustainable buildings would be LEED certification, and which stands for Leadership in Energy and Environmental Design. And TCU, this is a map of TCU and their LEED certified buildings. So the highest level is platinum, and then it goes gold, silver, and then just regular certification. And we have 1 certified, 6 silver, and 25 gold. But I think that we could aim for maybe a platinum, and also implement more gold designs in other buildings because most of these are dorms. So I think that some of the buildings like Sidbridge, or if we did renovations, then we could aim for more LEED certification or just more sustainable buildings in general. So these are some examples of sustainable buildings in the area and just across the world that we can look at for inspiration. And one that's close to us would be the UTD Student Services Center. And they use a lot of natural light in theirs, and also saved about $60,000 on energy from making their student services more sustainable. And just in general, recycled rainwater, solar panels, natural lighting, those are all things that you'll see in sustainable buildings. But I think that the Bahrain World Trade Center is the coolest one because it not only has the design with where it channels the wind and with the wind turbines in the middle, but it also has reflective pools at the bottom that help with evaporative cooling, which we learned about in weather and climate. And so there's a lot of cool different designs that we have in different sustainable buildings. And the California Academy of Sciences has a green roof, which you'll see if you guys have ever been to the Brit in Fort Worth, then they have a green roof on the top as well. And that just helps with gathering rainwater, and also they use solar panels up there as well. But the next characteristic of sustainable cities that I want to talk about is public transportation. And like I mentioned earlier, this is the Fort Worth public transportation system versus the Bay Area. And as you can see, Fort Worth is way bigger, about 1.5 times bigger in land mass, or like land size, than the Bay Area. And we have a similar population, but we only have 1 railway. And like Justine mentioned last week, we have this bus system, but we have even less buses now than even in this map. I couldn't find an updated one. But even though Dallas has 4 different trains, they don't really go to our area. So I think that since it is bigger in size than San Francisco, that shows that there really should be a more robust public transportation system, and it would decrease air emissions, obviously. So that's another good thing that could come from better public transportation in Fort Worth. And then next we have green technology and practices. So smart lighting and carbon capture are the 2 I want to talk about today. And for smart lighting, it has the potential for 90% cost reduction. And in general, smart lighting just means smart LED bulbs or smart lighting systems that contain software that's more automated. So it saves how much light you use, and it's just the type of light bulbs they use. And then carbon capture would be capturing carbon dioxide before it enters the atmosphere and then transporting it and storing it, which just reduces carbon emissions in general, and also can convert it to carbon neutral fuels, as you can see in, how do you use the pointer? Oh, there we go. As you can see up here in this diagram, or algae cultivation, things like that. So it can convert it to more sustainable types of energy as well. So the next thing I'm going to talk about is water conservation. Some stats that I found for DFW is that 60% of water usage is from homeowners, and Fort Worth provides direct or indirect water to 1.3 million people. So obviously that's a lot of people that we're trying to provide to. And in my last presentation, I said that we need to have a water conservation plan, but I actually found one where there's less consumption and better management, things like that. But I actually found that we do have a water conservation plan that implemented in 2019, and it was actually adopted by Freese and Nichols, which is a company that a lot of people from TCU intern at in Fort Worth. And the objectives are pretty broad to reduce water consumption, reduce loss and waste, improve efficiency in general. But there weren't a lot of numbers on the conservation plan and like exact things that we want to get done. So I do think that's something that we could improve upon when we have more concrete plans. It's more just it was very broad, and there was less there's less specific things that we could really focus on. And then I also just wanted to point out some of the methods that the EPA actually uses. So in offices, a lot of the water that we use is sanitary, or for cooling, heating, irrigation. There's a pretty big, wide range of the types of water that we use, but for the EPA, they actually were able to reduce their water intensity by 50% from around 2003 to 2020 by monitoring water meters, eliminating single pass cooling, things like that. So I think that's something that we could implement in our conservation plans for Fort Worth, and just more direct plans that we have versus just, oh, we want to reduce it in general. I think that these are some specific things we could look at. Also, I have water management in cities. As I mentioned in the last time that we spoke, this diagram really shows that in landfills, or incineration and putting different food and waste in landfills is definitely lower on the priority list, and higher would be rethinking and redesigning our types of waste management, or reducing and reusing our waste in general. So this just shows what would be preferred versus what we end up doing a lot is incinerating and putting in landfills, which causes more carbon emissions and more methane emissions in landfills, things like that. And lastly, the last sustainable city characteristic that I want to go over today is urban farming, which is cultivating, processing, and distributing food in around urban areas. And vertical farming is a really good type of urban farming that I think we could implement more because it decreases the amount of land we use, and we already have a lot of lands that we take up as Fort Worth. And hydroponics and aquaponics both just promote really good relationships between aquatic life and plant life, and also decrease the amount of land we need as well, just because we're running out of land that we can use for arable land that we can use to grow crops. So I think that these are ways that we can implement this in Fort Worth society as well. And next, I just want to talk about some current initiatives that we have in Fort Worth that are helpful, but we can go a little bit further in. Bike Fort Worth is another public transportation type of initiative that we have in Fort Worth, as well as Business Smart and Save Fort Worth Water, which both are more education-based and try to teach businesses and people around Fort Worth about how to save water and how to be more smart with their business practices. But there is no formal city sustainability or climate action plan or community mitigation or goals for reducing emissions. So I think that education is really important, and that's something that we've been doing well in Fort Worth, but we're not really focusing on how we can really reduce these levels and reduce climate emissions in general. So I think that the things that we can focus on the most are more sustainable buildings, better water conservation, comprehensive public transportation systems, which we are working on water conservation, so that's why I wanted to put that in earlier in the PowerPoint, because I think that's really important that we do have that since 2019. Focus on redesigning waste management systems, and I also want to talk about the Ecoflex facility that I mentioned last time, that it would be amazing if it was built. It would just be a combination of business leaders, NGOs, different educators, all working together to see how we can better tackle environmental issues and how we can implement those in society as well as worldwide, because this would be an international facility in Fort Worth, so that'd be something really cool if that does end up happening. And there aren't very concrete plans, but they do have some architectural plans and things that could be implemented in the next few years. So I think that would be amazing if we could do that. But here are my sources.
Thank you.